Lights, camera, bullshit.
Live from downtown Detroit, it's the No Bullshit News Hour with my main man, Charlie LeDuff and Karen Dumas.
Na 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 na.
The bullshit!
Just breaking news. No more bullshit. No more bullshit.
I can't fucking take it, right? It's the election season. Okay, you know, I got a little cable staying at a buddy's house. The talking points are killing me. They're lies. They're fucking lying to us.
No kidding.
And this is the mother of all swing states, right? 1% swings this electoral college, and you, the smart listeners and viewers, are part of that. So look, I don't need to talk Trump. We're doing Trump for 9 fucking years, right? You already know. But you can't tell me that Kamala Harris has everything to do with the border, right? Borders are whatever. Hey, Todd Bensman of the Center for Immigration Studies, a senior fellow or something like that, the author of this book,
that.
Overrun, How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Border Crisis in U.S. History, which is a fact. Is this book doing well, Todd?
Yeah, it is.
Good. Maybe you can sell some of those extra copies behind you there on your Zoom. Okay. Well, regardless, the border's out of fucking control. We got minimum, we'll go through it. We get minimum 10 million people we didn't ask for. And you've got no explanation for it. What we get is talking points from this. I don't want to rip the media anymore, but I'm going to. Reporters that work hard, I got nothing but respect for. But you can see just by watching cable, because I've never had cable, right? That they're getting the talking points. And the talking points are lies. And I don't like being manipulated through like soft-bodied and actually weak-minded people if you've got to get your talking points. And unlike Todd, who's actually walked with the caravan, been on the trains down there. He's going to the Darian Gap in Colombia, Panama. We're going to talk about that. People that actually do the work. Don't tell me. So Kamala Harris, in a very undemocratic way, right, is now the nominee for my former party.
So it appears. I mean, that seems to be where it's headed. She is the presumptive nominee ahead of the convention.
How's that remotely possible? You never got a vote. You never got a delegate. Less than 1% of the Democrats even liked this woman 4 years ago.
But it all seemed to happen in the flip of a switch. Trump got shot, Biden resigned, and now Harris is the presumptive nominee.
Holy smokes. Okay, so she's not the border czar. Euphemistically, she wasn't, but she was. Here, just play that rip.
Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People are going to have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
The Biden team didn't declare her the border czar. They wanted her to work on kind of the root causes of immigration.
There has been so much criticism against Kamala Harris. You know, she was the border czar.
Calling her sort of the border czar.
Hey, Todd.
Yes.
Was she the border czar, bro? Nobody knows the border like you know the border. Was Kamala Harris the border czar?
Yes, she was definitively the border czar. She was, I just put up published a piece yesterday in the Federalist. You can go to my website, toddbensman.com, and find that. I've got the links to the press conference where Joe Biden appointed her to be in charge of the administration's central border strategy, their signature border strategy, the main thrust of everything that they were going to do at the border, which they call addressing root causes, meaning they thought that they could control mass migration by nation building the countries of Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, which were the big sending countries. All three of those were huge sending countries. So we're going to build those economies, rebuild their government institutions, and thereby people who live there won't want to immigrate with an E, leave,
right,
and go to the United States. They named that as their top strategy, and they put her in charge. She is on the record embracing her leadership role over that central signature strategy, and held press conferences every time she persuaded an American company to go down there and set up shop, manufacturing or whatever, and would claim credit that this was because of her personal leadership on the issue. I don't know why they're trying to quibble about the title. Is there an official border czar title in the government nomenclature, in the whatever the records of? It doesn't matter whether she was the root causes chief, the border czar, whatever. She was in charge. She had a leadership role. She was appointed that. She embraced it. She had press conferences. So the anchor line is not cut just because there's no border czar title officially in the government record.
Okay, so I'm just going to see if you can do it back of the envelope. See, I actually write on the back of envelopes. So in the last 3.5 years, how much money have we sent to the triangle, right? Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. How many billions?
I think about 4 billion.
So we've sent 4 billion to make it a better place to live. By the way, this is a failed leftist European model. Like we're the colonialists. We're having all kinds of immigration. Let's just pump tons of dough into Algiers and whatever, and that'll stop everything. And it failed. So we've sent 4 billion. How many people from these 3 countries in the last 3.5 years have entered the United States, Todd?
At least 2 million by my count. The root causes doctrine did absolutely nothing at all. You can't even benchmark it. Nobody ever asked, well, how are you going to, show success? No reporters ever went in there and challenged the whole doctrine and where it came from. And nobody ever investigated. You can't find anything out there when they were announcing this, when they dubbed her the border czar, when she embraced the leadership role, or when they started spending billions of dollars. Nobody ever did the reporting work, the basic stuff. Like, hey, this is your central doctrine. Let's go in there and really provide some accountability reporting about this program. Had anybody ever looked at the root causes doctrine, they would have found that this is borrowed or plagiarized from the Europeans who were using, European liberals who were using it in the early 80s, came up with this thing all the way through to now. And 40 years worth of a track record where you have academics throughout the European continent doing studies on how well it worked, and every single one of them giving it a fail mark. It never worked in Europe. The American reporters would have been able to find that. I have it all in my book, linked and cited and everything else, and in my Federalist article from yesterday as well. I mean, it's not hard to find. Google it. All you got to do is Google it, and you would find that it is a complete failure. What they're using this for is that it's kind of like showing some glitter over here. Hey, everybody, look over here at this solution, this central solution, tinsel, look, shiny, glittery catnip stuff, while they're opening the border over there, saying we've got the solution going over here. Don't worry about what we're doing on the border in the meantime. we're just going to open it. And man, they fell for that. The whole country fell for that. And now they're trying to backpedal out of this and try to cut her from responsibility for this whole ridiculous strategy that caused us to open the border.
Todd, can I ask, just thumbnail, why the unregulation is an issue for America, for Americans, just without there being any type of process, just the whole raggedy issue surrounding the border and the openness of the border, why that is an issue for us.
Right. That's a great question. Actually, all you have to do is look at Boston, which is almost in bankruptcy. The city of Boston, bankruptcy. They're looking at over $1 trillion in costs.
Wow.
For all of the illegal immigration that came up. The Center for Immigration Studies, my outfit, just put out a huge new report about the fiscal burden alone of the numbers of needy, hands-out people that showed up from the border in Boston to take advantage of all the stuff they're offering for free. It's the same problem with New York. Go look at Mayor Adams' public comments and how they are just rending their garments and gnashing their teeth. How are we going to? They're shipping. They're doing their own busing, trying to get rid of them. San Diego, Denver, Chicago, Washington D.C. America's cities are just staggering under this unfunded burden of millions and millions of people that have come in over the border, and that's just one small problem with this. And it's why the polls for the campaign are showing that this is an apex issue. It's right up there with inflation. Often it polls higher than inflation as a problem area that Americans are likely to punish the Democrats for. That's why the Harris campaign is just furiously going on the aggressive defense, offense, defense to, try to muddle everything right now, and I think they're going to do a pretty good job with that.
Yeah,
actually.
but I'm not buying it. Okay, so
of course not.
Okay,
so you and I have been talking about this shit for 3 years straight, Charlie.
For fucking 25 years, dude.
Right.
How long we've been covering the border? How many times we've been in the desert? You can't lie to us. That's why this is the no bullshit news hour. And if you want some facts, you're gonna get it. You are. I'm not bullshitting. It's so frustrating. I'm like, let me just call the world's expert. Congress asks you, okay, and I know we're going to get to it. You've got some news and some traveling coming up, but Biden, for all these years, I can't do anything, right? Congress won't give me the power I need, and then he puts in some executive orders. They don't do anything, but they're pitching you, ladies and gentlemen, that border encounters are down in June from what, last year or from May? They're down 55%, Todd. Is it from the previous month or from the previous year?
Actually, the numbers of illegal crossings are down to where they were when Biden first took office. It's the lowest numbers since he took office. That's real. Those numbers are low.
That's real. Let me stop you there.
Yes.
It's about 90,000, which before Biden for June is a record. Nobody used to cross the desert in the middle of summer. So we're still at a record. But here's what, and just jump in anytime you want, Todd. Here's my back of the envelope. Here's what's really going on. There was about 90,000 encounters with illegals on the southern border in June. 90,000. Times that by 12. That's 1,080,000 people, right? 1 million people. Okay. But you guys remember the Border Patrol app? I signed up for the Border Patrol app with my dog's face, right? And it 80,000 people a month are allowed to get on the app. Half of them walk over and half of them fly directly over. So that's another 80. They're hidden. They're not in the numbers. That brings you up to 170,000 people a month. Here's the next one. 35,000 people a month are gotaways. These are the super dangerous people, the ones that don't want to get caught.
Gotaways.
Yeah, like Border Patrol's so busy, they got an idea. I can see them over there running. Right. But we don't have.
Just let them go.
Right. Another 65,000 people a month overstay their visa. There are these two types of visas. There's a student visa and the tourist visa.
And there's no oversight of that.
Very little. The tourist visa, you get to stay for 180 days, right? But in the first half of this fiscal year, the first 6 months, 25%, this is the United States government telling you this, 25% of all U.S. consulates and embassies issued visas more than they have in history. 25%. Why are we all of a sudden with an immigration problem giving more tourist visas than ever and people don't go home? The student visas, if you get here on a student visa, you're admitted for an indefinite time, right? Graduate students in math and science get to stay an extra 2 years to work without having to pay taxes.
What?
The Trump administration attempted to close this loophole. Biden withdrew it, and nobody's really checking if these people have violated their terms. That's why you got Hamas holes spraying statues and buildings and threatening Jews on the subways. Get them the fuck out of here. Nobody asked for this. We want it in order. Now, I'm almost done, Todd. In the first half of this fiscal year, the first 6 months, 155,000 green cards were issued, a record. Okay. And now, Todd, you've discovered a new, what's the refugee loophole? What's the difference between a refugee and an asylum seeker? And what's this new loophole?
Right. So you've mentioned 2 or 3 of the strategies that the administration put in place for the purpose of reducing the visuals of border congestion, which are just terrible for the polls. And they say this out loud and in writing. We are doing these programs, CBP-1, the app, we're going to walk them in over the bridges. We're going to let them fly directly from foreign airports into U.S. airports instead of crossing. They say it in writing that we're doing this to reduce border congestion. So the numbers that you're seeing that they're boasting about are the actual ones that are like not taking advantage of those and are just crossing in anyway. And we're letting them in anyway. All of them are just being let in anyway. So there's the land border one, and there's the flights one. And then there's these other things like the tourist visas that they're increasing and everything else to reduce the pressure. Now there's this new one, a third rail or a fourth rail, which is that they are refugeeizing, if that's not even a word, but they're refugeeizing.
It is now.
Right. They're refugeeizing tens of thousands of regular labor migrants down in Latin America. For the first time in like 30 years, we don't give refugee cards out to these people. We never have, because refugee status is kind of like asylum, but in a third country where they're, picture a big Syrian war refugee camp outside of Damascus or something, war-torn. Those are the people that we normally give refugees cards to. And when you get one of those, it usually takes years of vetting and everything, 2 years, 3 years before we finally approve them. Then we will fly you in at taxpayer-backed expense for travel loans, and then we'll give you full resettlement aid, a place to live at government expense, pots and pans, full access to all of our welfare benefits, a green card, much coveted within a year, and then that puts you on a 5-year path to U.S. citizenship, all expenses paid. Now they're giving those out to tens of thousands of Latin Americans, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans, Haitians, Cubans, Guatemalans, Salvadorans, all the people that are crossing the border illegally. as a way to reduce the border congestion, just like the other programs, except nobody's ever reported on this until now. I just have put up a big report finally just saying, hey, they're doing this weird thing. It deviates from all the norms. They're handing these things out. Remember, I told you it takes 3.5 years to get approved for one of these. They're doing it in 9 days down there.
What the fuck?
I've never seen the government do anything in 9 days. Todd, let me
ask for this?
I don't know, but that's what I was going to ask. So is this open and unregulated, and I'm not going to call it a process, I'm going to call it lack thereof. Is that supposed to communicate a more empathetic or compassionate country? I mean, what is the reason behind it if it is economically a burden to the system? What's the reason behind it?
Another good question. In my opinion, it's a political calculus. They understood that the border crossing, the visual optics of mass border crossings is going to lose the election in 2024. And so they were preparing, and they knew that as Trump campaigned, that people were going to surge in before he might win, to get in while the getting's good, before the door slams shut behind them. And so for a year, they've been planning and prepping these different programs to block that from happening just before the election. So these are just political, in my opinion. They say flat out in their public documents, we're doing this to reduce border congestion. They're, of course, not saying we want to reduce border congestion because it makes us look bad and we'll lose elections. They don't say that, of course. That's Todd Bensman to say that and Charlie over there to say that. I believe that to be completely true. That's what they're doing. And that after November 5, if Harris wins, all of a sudden these programs will kind of relax, or they'll expand them even more. Trump will close them all down immediately. First day, he'll close them all down.
Let me ask you this. The refugee status, it's war-torn countries, Syria, et cetera, et cetera. Forget Haiti for a moment, because that's the Caribbean. It's not Latin America. They speak French. How many wars currently are being waged in Latin America, Todd?
Right, exactly. That's
Zero.
the point.
None.
That's the point.
What refugee? And Karen was basically asking, so why are they doing this? We'll leave that to the voter. We'll leave that to the voter. But when they talk about the great replacement theory, white people aren't talking that anymore. If I might, my friends, black people are talking that. The majority minority in this country, African Americans who built this country and have a vast experience in this country. You hear them. You hear guys like Red. Like, wait a minute, jobs, benefits, schools.
Right. But I also hear people feeding that as a way of being to assume a side on it one way or the other without real awareness or insight as to the information like we're having today. So I still think even some of those opinions may be a little more subjective than necessary because they don't have all the information. So
that's what we're trying to do.
Right.
Let's get this right though, because Todd did all the work. We got people from Europe. They never say Europe, but they're coming in from Russia. They're coming in from Ukraine. They're coming in, they're coming in from France even. They're coming in from China. They're coming in from Africa. They're coming in from Latin America. They're coming in from Canada. They're coming from everywhere, man. Middle East.
170 countries represented in this thing. 45% of everybody hitting that border is not from Mexico or Latin America.
And that's interesting. 55, the majority of people coming over are Mexicans, correct? I mean, the plurality, the plurality, the largest group. Who's the largest group?
Right now, probably the largest group might be Venezuelans.
With their corrupt elections.
Right. But remember, Venezuelans have been safely resettled in 15 countries for 10 years now. 7 million of them left. They didn't start coming to our border until we opened it up and started letting everybody in. Then they unleashed. But during the Trump years, you didn't see any Venezuelans trying to come across because they get thrown back into Mexico or, just completely deported all the way back. But you didn't see that.
I met a guy here in Detroit, right? He's a Venezuelan who was working in a steakhouse in Bogota, Colombia for 10 years.
Right.
10 years. And now he's here on a tourist visa and he's not going back. So, you know, y'all make your decisions. So, Todd, but the fact of the matter is the illegal crossings are going down. So what's happening in Mexico? And then more famously, what's going on in Panama?
So you said it earlier that, you know, the administration is making this claim. I just heard it again at Harris's speech yesterday, that were only the Republicans to give us this piece of legislation that they keep holding back, this bipartisan piece of legislation, and it was bipartisan, we would be able to control the border. But, you know, I don't want to offend your listeners here, but that's bullshit, because I know they've never heard that word on your show.
Right.
But
we got a dump button, Todd.
but here's why it's bullshit is because the administration saw an election coming with terrible polling numbers on this issue. They knew that they were going to literally lose on this issue. So Biden himself went down and met with President Lopez Obrador of Mexico, and they cut a deal. The deal was, we need you to shut things down on your end. So the Mexicans put out 35,000 troops and started rounding up tens of thousands of immigrants on their northern border with us, especially across from Texas, and forcing them with truncheons onto buses and airplanes and flying them 1,500 miles south to their southern provinces, where they've created a Gaza Strip blocked in by militarized roadblocks. And they are constantly scouring the northern border regions and catching everybody they can and putting them on these buses south. That is not done by the piece of legislation that they say they need. That is the singular strategy that they did to reduce the number of border crossings in just the last 4 months by like 50%. 80% even.
Did we pay the Mexican government to do this?
Yeah, that's a big mystery. 60 Minutes went down to interview Lopez Obrador about this, and he said in the 60 Minutes interview that I want $20 billion as a down payment for this.
If you don't
give it to me, he was asked, well, that sounds like blackmail. And he's like, well, you know, it'd be a shame if anything bad happened to that border of yours up there, that nice border up there, if I don't get I say what I mean.
Wow.
And he just flat out said, you know, when he was asked, well, what happens if you don't get the 20 bill? And he said, looks like the migrants will keep coming.
Wow.
So we think that he got paid off. We haven't seen the actual line item in the State Department budget. I'm sure that they're sandbagging on that. Some money had to have gone down there, security assistance or humanitarian this or that or whatever it was.
No dark money there, right?
And how do you know these migrant camps are getting bulldozed? Because you've actually been there, Todd?
Yes, and so has Mexican. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time on the Mexican side with the Mexican troops as they're doing their patrols. What are you guys doing over here? Oh, our orders are to round them all up and ship them back down to Tapachula. And I've run into lots of immigrants who are on the run, hiding from the dragnet. Where was I last? In Chihuahua State, south of Juarez. I drove for days down there. And there they were like running through the desert and hiding and in broad daylight, whereas before they would just, you know, catch the bus to Juarez and cross over. So, I mean, I documented this personally, but so is Mexican media. And I was the first one, not to toot horn on this, but I reported on this the first time I did an elaborate report on what the Mexicans were doing on January 17th, about 3 weeks into it. And for like 3 months after that, no other American reporter or writer wrote about it. It was just me writing about this huge Mexican operation set up by a diplomatic trip by the President of the United States, because nobody's down there covering this. And then 60 Minutes came in and did that. And then after that, the New York Times and Washington Post. And now everybody's, belatedly covering this. But that Mexican operation was not provided for in any piece of legislation. It was something a president could do without legislation. Donald Trump did it for 4 years. He had those Mexicans down there doing military operations to this same effect. So it's just
Was he
bullshit
paying them
that
too?
they need. What's that?
Was he paying them too?
No, he's threatening to close the border.
No, he threatened. No, he did it a different way. He said, if you don't do this, we're going to impose 28% tariffs on all Mexican products exported into the U.S. And that was enough right there. The day that Biden entered, Biden lifted that threat, and they came.
And it's history. I mean, whatever you think of it, these are the facts. These are just facts. You can't rewrite it. And by the way, Todd, the bipartisan legislation you speak of, it was not bipartisan. That was Langford from Oklahoma, right? Couple of Democrats and backed by Mitch McConnell, but nobody else.
Right.
Like,
the guys in the Senate, some of the Senate Republicans came up with this gift to the Democrats for their campaign that they're using now. But I just want to point out that the way that that the Democrats, I just saw a big campaign ad from the Harris campaign about this, and they're talking about it at their rallies. But the way that they're framing this is that this was the penultimate legislation that would have allowed them to shut down the border and get this under control, but that Donald Trump had it killed because he wants this to be a festering sore for the campaign. But when you just read the text of the thing, it allows 1.8 million border crossings in legislation every year.
Plus families don't get counted.
5,000 a day illegal border crossings embossed in legislation when current legislation allows for zero.
Well, let me say this. Yeah, let me say this.
For that?
Because what Biden unilaterally did, right, is basically what that bill was.
Yes.
That's exactly what we have now. And when we add up the 90,000 encounters, 80,000 Border Patrol apps, 35,000 gotaways, 65,000 visa jumpers, 25,000 green cards, 10,000 refugees, all this a month, all that equals up to 3.5 million people a year. This is not a solution. This is not serious. I don't like politics, and I don't want to be lied to. We, as the people, will decide who comes in. You asked the great question, and we didn't get the answer. Who decided this? Because obviously, by any poll, any conversation you have, the American people do not want this. Mark, do we have that clip of Senator Harris talking to the head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement and comparing them to the KKK?
Klan was what we would call today a domestic terrorist group.
Why? Why would we call them domestic terrorist group?
Because they tried to use fear and force to change political environment.
And what was the motivation for the use of fear and
It
force?
was based on race and ethnicity.
Right. Are you aware of the perception of many about how the power and the discretion at ICE is being used to enforce the laws? And do you see any parallels?
I do not see any parallels between
I'm talking about perception.
officers and agents.
I'm talking about perception.
I do not see a parallel between what is constitutionally mandated as it relates to enforcing the law.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a
that
perception?
puts ICE in the same category as the KKK? Is that what you're asking me?
No, I'm very specific about what I'm asking you. Are you aware of a perception that the way that the discretion
I see no parallel.
I'm not finished.
I see none.
I'm not finished. I'm not finished. Are you aware that there's a perception that ICE is administering its power in a way that is causing fear and intimidation, particularly among immigrants and specifically among immigrants coming from Mexico and Central America. Are you aware of the perception?
I do not see a parallel between the power and the authority that ICE has to do its job and the agents and officers who do it professionally and excellently with lots of compassion.
Sir, how can you be the head of an agency and be unaware of how your agency is perceived by certain communities?
There is a lot of perceptions in the media and in the public that are incorrect about the agency.
But the perception exists, would you agree? Whether or not it's correct. And wouldn't you agree then that if that perception exists, there might need to be some work done to correct the perception?
I do want to advocate for the workforce, the vital public safety mission that they have to protect the homeland. And I think more people need to know how valuable they are to the society. So I agree with you on that.
So I understand your point that you want to defend the honor of the good men and women who work in the agency. And I appreciate that point. And I know the vast majority of the men and women who work in the agency do a noble and good job. I'm not talking about that.
What are you
talking about? The perception.
Okay. What is that?
Okay, I can, Charlie.
Yep.
I know exactly what that is. At that time, you had a movement called Occupy ICE, which involved, just tens of thousands of far-left liberal progressive activists who were purveying the Donald Trump era immigration policies as a modern or latter-day Holocaust, like Nazi Holocaust. Detention centers were concentration camps for latter-day Jews who happen to be brown and immigrants coming illegally across. The ICE agents were painted as Nazi jackbooted, brown-shirted thugs who were running around rounding up the Jews, the latter-day Jews, and that Donald Trump was Adolf Hitler. And so what she was doing there was pandering to that far-left liberal narrative. Abolish ICE was part of the movement. Antifa, all those guys were out there with placards saying abolish ICE, jackboot, get rid of detention centers, get rid of detention, in deportation, free them all. Stop the enforcement that's intimidating people. Well, of course, you could say that all lawbreakers are intimidated by the sight of a police officer. Especially one who comes knocking down your door. I mean, lawbreakers should be intimidated by law enforcement personnel, whatever kind of lawbreaker they are, whether it's being here illegally or not. But they transform that into this really extreme narrative about the Jewish Holocaust from the 1930s and 40s, and it was widespread that this was a race-generated kind of policy, and that it was all immoral like Jim Crow laws. So that's where she was going with that. And when she was running for president in the primaries, 2019, before she dropped out, she was on board with all of those policies. I am going to abolish ICE. She didn't say it like that, but she said, I'm going to start from scratch. She kind of dog whistled their policies. She was as extreme as you could ever possibly get. She took her.
What we got is this. What we got is this. That's what we got. When every Democrat raised their hand on that debate stage, right?
That's right.
We're gonna end. We're gonna
decriminalize illegal border crossings. That's extreme. Nobody in the Democratic Party had ever proposed something like that. That's crazy talk.
Everybody can think what they want, but you just need to know facts. So don't gaslight me and don't bullshit me.
I'm Grace Karros, and I'm third generation of American Coney Island. People say Detroit's a comeback city. I say, where you been? We've been here for over 100 years. My family's been here on the same corner, serving our famous proprietary American Coney Island hot dog. So like always, we're keeping things fresh, updated, and new. We'd love to have you come downtown and visit us. But if you can't, you can always go to AmericanConeyIsland.com, order a Coney kit, get it delivered fresh right to your door.
Well, you know, when it rains, the power goes out. And when the power goes out, the internet goes out. When the internet goes out, I call my friend Matt and Bernie at XG Service Group. Look at Bernie here on his hands and knees, giving it everything he's got. Look at that man crack. So busy, he forgot to wear a belt. There's Matt right there getting the board together. That's 734-245-4100 if you need Matt and Bernie to come take care of your voice over internet, your security cameras, off-campus access control, Wi-Fi, and cameras for homes and business. They'll design it for you. You got restaurants, they do drive-through systems, railroad cameras for public safety, total wireless camera systems for your home and business. Yeah, that's right. Call XG Services at 734-245-4100.
This message of Uplift is brought to you by business and personal wealth advisor Luke Nowacki, who reminds you that what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but never enter the kingdom of God? But while you're waiting, Nowacki wants you to remember that overreaction is not a sound financial strategy. So call Luke Nowacki at 248-663-4748 for sound financial advice.
Now, you're going to Colombia. What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? You might not come back alive with what you got planned. Right? Hey, just don't fuck around, man. You're going into one of the heaviest places in the world. You know that. Your wife knows
heavy.
that.
It's heavy. Yeah, no doubt.
Tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm going to the Darian Gap because there's something big has just happened there.
I need to do this before you go on with this. If anybody looks at a map, Mark,
is it still there?
Our high tech, map right there, that is where Colombia and Panama intersect, and there's a big jungle there, and it's called the Darian Gap. Go ahead, Todd.
Right, it's one of the busiest, most trammeled immigrant pathways to the border that there is. I mean, all those people from all those 170 other countries, that's how they get here. They cross, they land in South America, and then they make their way through Colombia over to Panama, and then they have to walk and hike for whatever, a week or 10 days to get through there. It's dangerous to go through there. Lots of immigrants die. In normal years before the Biden administration, there might have been 10,000 a year that went through, 8,000, 7,000 a year. On Inauguration Day, for the Biden administration, the numbers ramped up so that by the end of 2021, because they were letting everybody in at the border, and the word spread all throughout the world, 130,000 in that first year of the border crisis. 2022, it was 250,000. Last year, it was 550,000 went through there. So far this year, it's already, 400,000. It looks like we're on track to hit about 800,000 coming through there. That is a huge spigot, a river running into our border. And right now they're crashing on Mexico, but they're still coming, and Mexico's trying to hold them back. But lots of them are still pouring through into California. The Mexicans are letting them through into California, the foreign special interest aliens and extracontinentals. The reason I'm going is because Panama elected a new president who has vowed to close the gap. That's the first time I've ever heard a Panamanian, because they're sick of it. They're like,
what's his name? Molino?
Yeah, Molino, Jose Raul Molino, just got elected, and he says, I'm closing the gap. And he started July 1st. They're already stringing barbed wire, and nobody really knows because nobody's going down there to report on this. This is monumental. It's a big story in our election and in our border story. Because so many people are coming through there to hit our border. So I'm going to go down there and be the guy that tries to figure out, is it working? What's happening? So I'm going to go to Colombia first, to the jump-off points. There's 4 or 5 towns in there where all the smuggling is happening. I'll spend maybe a week in there, and then I'll go over to the Panama side and enter through the jungle to the receiving end. Now, the other thing that happened is that the Americans, probably because of the election, said, hey, we'll help you out with this, maybe at least until November 5th, and we'll put some air assets on the ground and we'll help you deport people by air. Whereas the Americans for 3 years have like created a super highway out of the Darian Gap. They've done everything they could to enhance and speed up and widen the what was a country lane before into a major super highway, 8-lane super highway. Now they're saying, hey, we'll help you with some air deportations. And so I want to see really what that means on the ground.
Dude, go in there. That's like the heavy of heavy, because you're dealing with like cartels. They smuggle dope, they smuggle weapons, they smuggle people. So be very careful, man. You know what I mean? It's not.
Yeah, I'll do my thing. I mean, you know, this isn't my first rodeo on that. In fact, I've been to the Darian before, so and done some reporting. I have some. I haven't been to the Columbia side though. So
you got a good
that'll be
hookup.
interesting.
You got good fixers.
Yep, I got a good fixer, and you know,
we have a lot of other stuff to do for the program, but you know what? We're not going to do it because that was just beautiful. If people want to follow your adventure, I'm assuming you're going to be doing it live on social. Take us out here. When are you going, and how can people follow what you're doing?
Right, I leave next week. I'll be probably in Columbia for a week or so, maybe less, depends on how long it takes. My employer, Center for Immigration Studies, CIS.org, they'll put up a page where they'll put my video and tweet the things I'm Xing, I don't know, twittering, tweeting, whatever what's the verb for Xing? I guess I'll be Xing, but they'll put that out, and I'll have a drone. I'll be putting my drone up, and I'll be writing. I have multiple outlets. You know, the Daily Mail will publish a piece or two, and I'll put up what I'm finding as I go. I'll probably write one big good piece from the Columbia side before I head over to Panama, and then I'll just keep going.
When are you going?
Until there's nothing left to write.
When are you going?
August 5th.
Ooh, that's like 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, amigo.
Yeah, I mean, my stuff, I'm already, if you look down, I'm already like loading up all, there's all my crap down there, trying to.
All those extra books you didn't sell.
Right.
Yeah. You can go hand those out. People wipe their ass with them. Yeah. Well, anyway, man, Buenaventura, okay? Be safe. Good journey.
Thank you.
Do something real. We appreciate your time, man. I admire you. I admire the work that you do,
Charlie.
And I know if you read the man's work, I know how hyper politicized everything is.
It is.
The man is a humanist. He is the grandson of immigrants, as we all are. Nobody's hating. What we want is order, and on our time and in an affordable way. I don't see an issue here. And if you want to be here, do it the right way and love the place. And if you're going to spray paint shit, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. I'm sorry.
Safe travels, Todd.
Thanks a lot. And all of my peeps came over lawfully. They were, approved for legal entry. I'm just going to say that. So,
well, my people were here before any European or anybody touched this continent. And of course, I am the offspring of slaves, slave holders, slaves that were freed and got themselves slaves, war veterans, Indian warriors, miners, loggers, right? Bunker Hill, Civil War, World War II, Vietnam. There hadn't been an immigrant in my family in 200 years, even though we're immigrants, right? I had in my family Indian agents killing members of my family. I swear to you. Look him up, Charles Leclanc. Charles Martel Leclanc. He was the leader of the native troops in the French and Indian War here. He's considered the grandfather of Wisconsin. Just
And you've done your genealogy.
Well, it's more than that. Genealogy is one thing. Knowing stories, that's what keeps it. Like people ask me, I said, the way you begin to do your genealogy, the first thing you do is you talk to the old women of your family, because they hold the stories. And even if the stories are incorrect, there's a kernel of truth in there. Like my very great grandfather, William Marshall, to this day, the oldest active serviceman in United States military history. At 83 years old and 10 months, he died, still active. And I was told he was the commandant of Fort Mackinac. But he wasn't the commandant of Fort Mackinac. He came over in 1822. They put him on a horse. He fought in the Black Hawk War, the Trail of Tears, the Seminole War, the Mexican-American War. And then when he was old, they sent him to Mackinac Island, where he became the ordnance sergeant. Okay? Civil War breaks out. He's in his 60s at this point. Everybody, including his son, William Marshall Jr., who was there when they captured Jefferson Davis in Georgia wearing women's clothes, trying to escape. Yes, indeed.
Oh, boy.
But the Sarge is left on Mackinac Island. He's the only soldier left, right? He's the only guy, because everybody else is shipped off. So you can imagine the locals. His grandpa's walking around in his blues with his yellow piping, and there goes the commandant.
So by default,
he got an obituary. He got an obituary in the New York Times front page. I have it. So yeah, those are real things. And I'm trying. If anybody's any military historian, I don't want to lobby Congress, but my grandfather was the oldest person to serve this country, and it would be nice for him to be acknowledged.
Gary.
And with that, I love you all. Te amo todo. Buena suerte, mi amigo. We'll see you next week.
Take care, Charlie.
No, you take care, Holmes.
All right.